All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 21 of the Cold Country Podcast, where we discuss everything WVU sports. I'm your host, Ian McIntyre. Joining me, as always, Tyler Cobb and Matt Howe. We have a special guest with us today for the second week in a row. This is Matt Lombs. We have two Matts in here, so we just call him Lombs, make it easier for us. But,
with
gentlemen,
no,
how are we doing?
with no camera.
Yeah, with no camera.
Thank you for having me, guys. This is great.
We're excited you're here, and we're all happy to be here.
I think
Indeed.
the no webcam and profile picture will add to the aura of the takes that we give. So
I agree. I'm enjoying the profile picture.
all right, let's get started here. We got a big episode here. So let's get started talking about big week 0. We will talk about Kansas State and Iowa State, not so much the other games that happen, but just the Big 12 game, as it is pretty important for the outlook of the conference. And going into it, Kansas State was favored, if I'm not mistaken, by 3, and Iowa State came out with the dub 24-21 at the end there, just running out the clock. I called it. We were texting back and forth before the game started. I think, boys, I got a feeling. I think Iowa State's going to win this. But I thought it was more of a toss-up than anything. But both teams surprised me in good ways and bad ways. First of all, I want to talk about just how many turnovers there were in that game, especially early on, dude. It was crazy.
It was a turnover fest. And I actually want to say, because a lot of people are going to see what happened in the first half of that game and assume that neither of these teams are going to be competing for a Big 12 championship this year simply because of how they looked in the first half. If you go watch the first half and most of the third quarter, and then you separate the fourth quarter, it was a completely different ball game. There was 21 total points scored through the first 3 quarters, and then there was 24 points total alone scored in the fourth quarter. I think the weather had a lot to do with that. If you looked at the hash marks and the lines, you could barely see them. It was going to be slippery. There was a lot of fumbles. There was obviously the muff punt. A big storyline is Dylan Edwards went down right after he muffed the punt and did not return to the game. So that's going to be an interesting storyline to watch. But I think the weather played a big factor, more of a factor than what people realize. And as soon as it kind of calmed down and both teams settled in, that fourth quarter, they started rolling. Both of these teams are still Big 12 contenders in my eyes, especially Iowa State, because they just played what is probably going to be their toughest game of the year. Both teams have a lot to look forward to. Kansas State, obviously, a little less so. They've got to get it together because that is a conference game, but Iowa State has a lot to feel good about.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking before the game, a lot of what went into my decision of picking Iowa State was Avery Johnson. He didn't look so hot as the rest of the Kansas State squad didn't look so hot in the first half. But he, again, like you said, he figured it out in the fourth quarter, especially. Good passes, maybe the second half. Good passes, good runs. Took care of the football a little better. I was just thinking that maybe Avery Johnson, there's not much more that he can do as a player to improve. I'm not saying that he won't improve, but I think there's a lot of work to be done. And the Kansas State O-line as well had a little bit of issues in that game. Iowa State loved to run the ball, especially later, and I think they did a great job of that in order to seal the game up and run some of the clock off. But great game, and yeah, I think the weather was definitely a factor. I literally started watching the game at the very beginning, and I'm like, this camera has to be like the worst quality camera ever, until I realized that it was raining, and like the entire stadium was misty. It was raining so hard you could like see it not even zoomed in on anything. So the weather was definitely a factor in all those turnovers, and it was a little cooler over there too compared to what it is here. So that definitely played a role too.
Long travel, jet lagged, the weather. A lot of people are going to put this on the game on Avery Johnson when I thought Avery Johnson played well. I didn't think he made any plays that were like, holy crap, he's going to go out and win it for Kansas State. But I also don't think he made any losing plays. He went 21 for 30, 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. He had a better completion percentage than Rocco Becht, who only threw 50%, but both of them took care of the ball for the most part throwing. Now, there was also some trouble with snaps and handling the ball. I think Rocco had 2 fumbles, if I'm not mistaken. What lost Kansas State this game, in my eyes, was the front 7 got worse as the game went on. It felt like they were doing an incredible job of stopping Iowa State's run game in the first half, and then that fourth quarter hit, and they just could not do a thing to stop Iowa State's running game. Carson Hansen came in the game, and he just did whatever he wanted to, had 16 carries for 71 yards, 4.4 yards per carry. No touchdowns, but that was the storyline of the game there at the end is Carson Hansen was just able to do whatever he wanted to on that Kansas State front 7. And that was the storyline, the story of the game towards the end.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely the biggest decider at the end. Carson Hansen was a dog there at the end. He had multiple like first downs, like 10-yard plus runs there at the end.
How about? I thought this was funny. You know, the last play. I think it was Hansen had that last play there at the end that got originally it was called a touchdown and then called back, and it was like a yard short. Had that touchdown counted, the over under would have hit the over. So the over bettors were dying last night when that touchdown.
I didn't know that. That's crazy. I've been in sweat amount situations like that before, but yeah, that's.
Missed it by half a yard. I still think both teams are contenders. Kansas State has got to figure it out, and Iowa State's got to figure out how to be more consistent.
Yep,
yeah, I
agree.
say my take for the game is exactly like that. They both showed defensively that they're very strong. I think Kansas State needs more on offense than just the quarterback. They had their running back was injured, and the receiver room, when it's wet outside, we're having issues. So I think in later games in the season, I think you're going to look a lot stronger. And then the same thing, like you were mentioning with Rocco Becht, at one point during the game, I think it was right when the third quarter had started, he was 3 for 3 on the scoring drive, Rocco Becht was, and through the whole game, he was only 4 and 14 at that point. So again, that got better towards the end of the game, but a really slow start, and it was just a grueling, very defense-heavy game the whole way. But Tyler and I were talking last night about the game, and these are 2 of the top teams in the conference, and that just shows that the door is open. There was a lot of parity last year, and I expect that to be the case again this year.
Yeah, I think so too. Sorry, you go ahead, Tyler. We're talking over each other.
Well, I was gonna do a little transition to Kansas State needed what Kansas's offense did yesterday, and they would have been able to pull through. That was the next game we were going to talk about, but if you've got something else on Farmageddon, go for it.
No, I mean we can move to the Kansas game. I told you before we started, I literally turned on the Kansas game when it was already 31-7. So I just watched basically a whole lot of nothing going on. But,
so I watched most of it, missed a little bit there during the third quarter, but for the most part caught it. Jalen Daniels, man. I have been low on Kansas all season long. If you look at like ESPN FPI, they have them ridiculously high. I've seen people say that they're Big 12 contenders when I just didn't see it because they lose Devin Neal, their program's leading rusher. They lose Mello Dotson and Kobe Bryant, and in the secondary, I thought Kansas would go downhill, but then you watch yesterday, and there is the caveat that, okay, it was Fresno State. They're not playing Big 12 competition yet. But at the same time, you look at what Jalen Daniels did yesterday, 18 for 20 completion, 176 yards, 3 touchdowns, did not turn the ball over. Jalen Daniels looked like what most people think Jalen Daniels could have been. And that is kind of scary for the Big 12 because if Kansas gets going in a new stadium that is going to be rocking almost week to week every time the Kansas shows up, that Kansas could be a sneaky contender this year.
I have them honestly. I'm not sure what to think of them because, like you said, it was Fresno of all people you could play. But putting up 31 points and, like you said, Daniels having only 2 incompletions and never turning the ball over and being so efficient with his touchdowns too, 3 touchdowns on only 170 passing yards. That's efficiency. So I think Kansas could make some noise potentially in the conference. I guess we'll see. But that's where I stand on that.
The biggest thing for Kansas is going to be, can their defense the rest of the year against Big 12 competition look like what the defense looked like yesterday? And it did look a little shaky at times. As that first drive, they let their quarterback, I can't even think of his name right now. I know it's Warner is the last name, but Fresno State's quarterback, Warner, marched up the field pretty effortlessly. They scored on that first drive. Now, they didn't score again the entire game, but if the Kansas defense can get it figured out, and then Cam Pickett at wide receiver, I didn't, like I said, Kansas lost a lot of playmakers. They obviously retained Daniel Highshaw, and that was about it. But Cam Pickett, the transfer from Ball State, he showed that he can be that wide receiver one. And Daniel Highshaw kept doing in this game what he did last year. So, like I said, Kansas could be scary. They just got to figure out that defense.
Yep, I think you're right. If we want to go ahead and move on here, we can talk about the rest of the Big 12 in general, talking on 3 teams that could potentially be competing for a Big 12 championship. We can talk about the Big 12 as a whole, which is, again, like last year, sort of a we don't know moment. I mean, we sort of know who's going to be at the top, and like the 5 or 6 teams that have a realistic chance to be at the top, but then everyone else is a toss-up. And that sort of reflects on my rankings for them. We have a few teams we know that are going to be at the bottom. But
do you want to go from bottom up?
I am going to go from bottom up. Do you want me to start with my list, or do you want to go? Or
we could just go one at a time. We can all say who we've got bottom, and then work our way up. So who do you got? Who do you have at 16?
All right. So at the very bottom, I got Arizona.
Okay. I have UCF. Everybody say they're 16, and then we can explain why.
I had Houston at number 16, and I know we talked about it a little bit. And I know, Tyler, that you have Houston a little higher, but yeah, I have them at 16.
Yeah, I also have Arizona at 16. I don't want to be a doomer about it, but I just don't have a good feeling.
They lost McMillan. They lost Tedero and McMillan, and their schedule is not easy. Those are sort of the only notes that I have for them. They didn't pick up anybody of note in the portal, at least not that I would hear about from mainstream media. Never dove into them because they didn't make much noise last year, but they lost one of the best receivers in the country. That is just going to hurt you overall. So I have Arizona at the bottom. 15, I have UCF.
So I have it. So me and you basically have a flip flop. Basically, I've got UCF at 16 and Arizona at 15. It could go either way. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I do have them 15 and 16. Like you said, for Arizona specifically, you're not going to lose Tet McMillan and expect not to lose production. They were already pretty poor last year. I just don't see a world where the talent on this Arizona team, which is made up of a lot of guys that could honestly be argued that they are G5 talent to an extent. I'm trying to be a little nice to Arizona. This is going to be on Noah Fafita. If they want any success at all, Noah Fafita is going to have to be what he was in 23, and show the talent that we know he has that he did not show as much last year. And I don't know if he's going to be able to do that because of a lot of the production we saw last year came out from Tet McMillan. To prove kind of the point, West Virginia had one of the worst, not even one of the worst secondary in the country last year, basically in the Power 5. And one of our corners, Aiden Garnes, who basically played against Penn State and then was benched it was second string the rest of the year because of just how much smaller and not as speedy and physical and big as the guys on that Penn State team. He got demoted to second team. He's projected to get significant starting time here at Arizona. So that kind of says the talent differential that from Arizona to the rest of the Big 12. And then as for UCF, I just don't like the Scott Frost move at head coach. I know he had success there before, and I've said UCF is a sleeping giant in college football. But I don't think going back to Scott Frost was the move, despite West Virginia doing something similar and going back to a head coach that they are familiar with and have won with. So, like I said, I don't have much else. Two teams that I think will be towards the bottom, at least bottom half.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I had Arizona at 15.
Yeah, I have UCF at 15. I mean, looking at their schedule, I mean, really the only guaranteed wins that you could talk about are their smaller schools, their FCS, their Group of Five. I mean, they'll pick up a win against Big 12 competition somewhere. That's just how the Big 12 works. It's always a meat grinder. But again, I just have to be a doomer. I don't see how they could be better than mid-pack this year. I don't see a way for them to excel.
Yep, I agree.
I agree.
At 14th, I have Houston, where Matt had him 16th. I have Houston at 14th. They did bring in Connor Wigman from A&M. But other than that, again, like Lombs was saying, with their schedules, I don't see how they could excel into the midfield.
Interesting. So me and both Matts discussed yesterday. I'm a little higher on Houston. I've come down from them a little bit. I was fairly high until they lost Halsey in the portal to LSU. However, I have Cincinnati at 14. I do like Scott Satterfield, and I think Brendan Sorsby is a decent quarterback. But just, again, like Noah Fafita at Arizona, the talent around Sorsby is not enough in my eyes to warrant me putting them any higher. I could see Cincinnati and Houston fighting for bowl eligibility because I do not have Houston in 13. So, like I said, I'm a little higher on Houston. But last year, Cincinnati beats Arizona State at home. Now, there's a caveat that Sam Leavitt was injured for that game. They were competitive against other teams. They shut out Houston early in the year. They only lost to Pitt by 1. They were competitive in the West Virginia game, despite us not being the best version of West Virginia. So since he could prove me wrong, like I said, Brendan Sorsby is a decent quarterback. I'm not liking the schedule. They open with Nebraska. I think Nebraska handles business at Cincinnati. That kind of kills momentum. They'll obviously get some wins against Bowling Green and their FCS opponent, but then they go on the road to Kansas. It doesn't look like a good year for Cincy in my eyes. So sorry, Cincinnati fans.
Yeah, I also had them lower. I had them at 12th. I had UCF at 14. I just, like you were talking about them earlier, I think you had them at 15. I think they're going to struggle this year.
So you have both Lombs and Howe both have Houston at 16, correct?
I am at 16. Did you say 16, Matt? For Houston? For Houston preseason?
Yeah.
Yes.
I have them. Let me check. I have Houston at 12 for preseason.
I swear you already said. Maybe it was Ian. Did you say Houston at 16?
I know.
Yeah.
I have Houston at 14.
Okay. Maybe that was just me then.
I think our bottom four are all the same, just a little scrambled.
Yeah. I have Cincinnati at 14. It's a make or break year. They're not going to get it done. It's time for a regime change.
For them. I think they have a pretty difficult schedule. More away games than home games.
They have all the wrong teams at home. They have all the wrong teams away. The schedule just does not look good.
That's about how we are, though, to be honest, West Virginia's schedule. So bottom four, we all have UCF, Arizona, Cincy. Most of you guys have Houston. I do not have Houston in the bottom four. Oklahoma State is my 13.
All right. I'll move on to my 13. I have Cincy at 13. So, like you were saying, Sorsby is a good quarterback. He needs help. And their schedule's bad. So I got him there at 13. You just said Oklahoma State, so I'm going to say my Oklahoma State's my number 12.
Interesting. So this is, like you said, we all have the same team similarly towards the bottom, just in shuffled order. I think the bottom 5 are pretty far away from the next 11 in my eyes, and I think we all have the same bottom 5. I've got Houston at 12. That's my 12. I like Houston a little bit better than the UCF, Arizona, Cincy, Oklahoma State. Gundy's a damn good head coach, but I don't know if he has the talent on that roster to boost very much from what he did last year. I don't expect them to go 3-9 again, but I don't know if they're gonna be fighting for bowl eligibility. I'll say that. So
Yeah.
if they get to 6 and 6, 7 and 5, I think they'll be kind of lucky. Like I said, Mike Gundy's a good coach, but I like Houston a little bit more. That's why I have them at 12. They bring in Connor Wigman, which I was not too huge on at Texas A&M, but I think he's a decent quarterback. They showed flashes last year. They obviously beat Kansas State and TCU, both teams that had solid records last year and showed flashes towards the end. So I like Houston a little bit more than I do Oklahoma State. But again, that bottom 5, Houston, Oklahoma State, Cincy, Arizona, UCF, I think is pretty far off from everybody else in the conference.
I think so too. Those are my bottom 5.
I know for me, though, controversially, I do have West Virginia at 13, and I know you guys are going to hate that. But for me, it just comes down to we haven't seen what they can do yet. Like, it's such a big unknown. Like, based on their schedule, they could exceed, 7-5, 8-4 if you really, really, really want to push it. But they could just as easily fall flat on their face. So, I mean, until we see what West Virginia can do throughout the first 3 games, then I'd feel comfortable, moving them up to at least mid-pack. But
He's an honest man.
Below Houston, below Oklahoma State, we know their coaches, we know their teams, we know how they can do. I just have to see. Got to wait and see.
So you have West Virginia below Houston and below Oklahoma State.
Yes.
Interesting.
So I actually have at 13, I have Colorado. I think they have shown that they could be all over the place. They were 13 and 12 over 2 years with 1 bowl appearance, and that just doesn't inspire confidence, especially since they're 2 nationally recognized star players, which went to the NFL, and hopefully they have success at the NFL level. They're gone, and it's hard to do when you build your team around 2 players. Once those are gone, what do you have? And it's not that you don't have a team, because they were a good team last year, but I wonder what the talent is going to look like this year without those 2 players.
So for me, Colorado is in a tier of their own. I'm only going ahead because Loam sort of prefaced his list of Houston and Cincinnati being above West Virginia. For me, Colorado is sort of in a tier of their own because, like Matt said, Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders both leave for the NFL. And those were your main guys that took you to compete for the Big 12 championship last year and almost got to that championship game. Those were your 2 guys. They're gone now. I understand that Colorado picked up Caden Salter, 5-star recruit, looking really promising. But again, we don't know with this Colorado team, especially with Deion Sanders at the helm. There are so many different dynamics at play. I have Colorado ranked on my list at 12. Is it 12? Where is it at? 6. I have Colorado right after Oklahoma State.
So I actually think I agree with the like Colorado's in a tier of their own, because similar to you, it's like they do lose Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, and you can't similar to what we talked about with Arizona losing Noah Fafita, you can't just skip over that. Those are 2 of the best players in the country last year, and you're replacing them with a guy that's only experiences at Liberty and freshman Julian Lewis, who, although was a 4-star, is still battling with a quarterback that, again, his only experience is at Liberty. And so can either one of those guys step up and compete in the Big 12? Colorado invested heavily in the transfer portal on the defensive side of the ball. I think they had like a top 20 defensive transfer portal class. So, yeah, it's almost like impossible to read what Colorado is going to do. Will they regress to what like the norm has been for Colorado? So back down to 4-8, maybe 5-7. I don't expect them to do what they did last year and be competing in November for a Big 12 championship, but I also don't think that they fall completely flat on their face, because I do like Caden Salter. I think he wins the job. You've got to find some production at wide receiver because you did lose Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. And so that is what Colorado is okay, will the quarterback produce, and can he find playmakers around him to help him, and will the defense be what we think it can be because of how highly of a transfer portal class they did bring in on the defensive side of the ball.
I think you're exactly spot on. I think they just managed to get away with a lot last year because of their two-star players, and they just managed to weasel their way out of issues that I think will come to light without that peak that you had.
I mean, Travis Hunter is a Heisman winner. You don't just replace those out of the blue.
Right.
Not to mention they don't have an easy schedule, so they start the year with Georgia Tech. Give me the Yellow Jackets, buddy. Who you got at? So what are we on? 10? 11? I had a Colorado 11.
Yeah, I had Colorado 11 as well. I was waiting for Lombs.
Yeah, I got Colorado at 10.
Okay.
We're all pretty close. I mean, we're all pretty close.
I think there's clear groups. I think there's 3 clear tiers. I think you have the teams that are all going to be 9-3, 10-2 towards the top. I think you have the teams that are just going to struggle at the bottom that we've covered, and then you're going to have the middle group, which is just going to be who knows what they're going to do. I think Colorado is part of that group, but I think they're the lower end of that group. I have at 10. I have Utah because they really struggled last year, and I know they've made a lot of changes, and they should be a lot better than last year. But again, it's hard to tell. We could say the same thing about WVU, but you haven't seen these guys play on this stage.
I'll get to that point in a minute. That's a good point.
I like what you said about 3 different tiers. I think you have top 5, bottom 5, and middle 6 is from what I'm looking at right now is where I think the conference is going to end up being. I have Utah a little higher than you, so I won't get to them yet. At 10, I have Kansas. This could change because, like I said, I was very low on Kansas, but what they showed yesterday proved that they can be a formidable team in the Big 12, especially if Jalen Daniels stays healthy. But again, that defense at times looks shaky. They lose Melo Dotson and Kobe. Can they force stops? Can they be a solid defensive team so that if Jalen Daniels does go down with an injury and the offense is not what we expect it to be, Kansas can stay in a game through the defense. So I've got Kansas at 10. I won't get to 9. Who else do we have at 10?
Yeah, Matt, you said number 10 was – oh, sorry, Matt Howe, you said number 10 was Utah for you?
Yeah, I had Utah at 10.
Right. I didn't get to my 10 yet. At 10, I have Kansas.
Me and Ian are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, at 10, I had Kansas. So Jalen Daniels showed he's a lot better, even improved as an individual player. He lost some help on the defense, but he was very efficient yesterday. Now, I will not get high on one game, especially a game against Fresno. So I want to keep them towards the lower half of this middle tier. But they have promise. I feel like Kansas is either a 4-8 team or a 7-5, 8-4 team. So they have potential to be there. And it's just another point of, I guess, we'll have to see. So, Loam, as soon as you have number 10.
I had said before I have Colorado, and I think my list just seems to be shifted up one spot compared to you guys, just based on my opinion of WVU. But going on to Kansas to touch on them, they just seem like they're streaky. So, they could go on to win 4 in a row, or they can go on to lose 4 in a row.
Good words.
Very, very streaky, and we're just going to have to see. Injuries can, swing that one way or another. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Matt Howe was extremely high on Kansas to end the year. I think anybody in the world would argue that they were the best 5-7 team last year. They had a stretch where they beat 3 ranked teams in a row. I think it was BYU, Colorado, and maybe Iowa State. I think those were the 3. It was like, second half of the season, Kansas was a lot different from her first half of the season, Kansas. And the Kansas I saw yesterday was second half of the season, Kansas. And so if they can set up for 12 games, Kansas could be a team to be scared of.
I would go so far as to say that those games where they beat the, 2 or 3 of the top other Big 12 teams, I think Kansas is one of the reasons we only saw Arizona State in the playoff series. I think there's a possibility, and there's an argument to be made that an 11-1, ranked 2 Big 12 team would have possibly made an at-large bid. So I don't know what that would have looked like exactly, but
Would have
there's
been,
definitely an argument to be made that they were the spoilers for the playoff series.
but I like what Lom said about being streaky because they do depend heavily on how healthy is Jalen Daniels and is he playing like what the ceiling that we know Jalen Daniels can be.
Yep, absolutely. All right, I'm gonna move on to number 9.
Go for it.
Number 9, I have TCU, which I know, Tyler, you were saying you like TCU a little better than I do. With TCU, Josh Hoover provides the good stability at quarterback, so Josh Hoover is going to be good for TCU this year. However, I think the rest of their offense is sort of in between for me. I don't know what to think about him, especially in the running attack. So that's why I have TCU number 9.
Ooh, so okay. I'll say I have West Virginia 9. And I don't want to speak on them too much because we're going to get to our game by game predictions and we're going to go a little bit more in depth when we get to that point. So I won't speak too much on West Virginia at 9, but they're so unknown, so many unknowns at West Virginia that I didn't feel comfortable putting them in the top half of the conference. So that's why they're floating around the middle with Kansas, Colorado. TCU's close by, a little bit higher, like you said. But I won't speak too much on them because we'll get to them later. Your TCU notes, you hit it right on the head that you're gonna have consistent play at quarterback. You're gonna have Josh Hoover, who I believe is TCU's now single season completion yardage leader, I think. The question last year was the defense. I think SMU put near 50 points on them, if not more. And their running game. They could not run the ball. TCU comes to Morgantown this year, and that's a pretty hefty key to the game. If we're going to end up getting in a shootout with TCU and it's going to be first to 40 type game, or can we force TCU to put the ball on the ground? It's going to be heavily – I think TCU's season heavily depends on whether or not they can play better defense than what they did last year, because the defense is what lost them a lot of games. Josh Hoover was solid all year. I think Josh Hoover is a sleeper candidate to be the best quarterback in the Big 12 this year. He's one of those gunslinging quarterbacks. But like you said, I'm a little higher on TCU. I'll get to their number when I get to them, but that's my kind of analysis for TCU, that I agree. They're going to have solid play at quarterback. Something nobody talks about is the fact that Sonny Dykes was in the national championship game 4 years ago. I feel like we've just forgotten that Sonny Dykes beat Michigan and played Georgia in the national championship. And so they still have that coach at the helm. Okay. And so if you pair that with solid quarterback play and maybe he gets a solid defense this year, TCU could be, quiet contender.
I like everything you've said. I also have TCU at 9, like Ian did, and I just want to add on to it that they do not have the easiest schedule out there, and I would say it's probably one of the hardest in the Big 12. We probably have a consensus. I don't want to jump the gun, but we probably have the same top 6, maybe in a different order from each other, and they play all of them except for Tech. I guess we'll see when we get there about if I'm right about who our top group is, but they have a pretty rough schedule in terms of quality of opponents, and I just wonder about the endurance of the team to be able to get through all of that unscathed. And so I'm not saying that they won't win some of them, because I think they will, but just in terms of your record, to be at the level to beat everyone else the whole year is very, very challenging.
Not only do they have a tough schedule, but they also have a 7-game stretch between week 3 and like week 10 or something like that. They played North Carolina week 1. Go to North Carolina and see what Bill Belichick's all about. Then they get a bye week, and then they play 7 straight. And in that stretch is SMU at home, Arizona State on the road, Colorado at home, Kansas State on the road, Baylor at home, and then us on the road, West Virginia on the road. And then they finally get another bye week. So, yeah, TCU's got a tough schedule. So if they do want to compete, they've got it made out for them.
Right.
I mean, based on that schedule, though, at least from what I'm looking at, how you guys said that, Kansas could play spoiler, or they did play spoiler last season. I think this could be TCU because, I mean, They're going to control their destiny. They're going to have all these matchups where they want them. So they could find themselves at the top.
Yeah, I think
They
you're
could
absolutely
play
right.
spoiler.
That's realistic.
I don't hate that show. I like that.
All
They
right,
could
I'm
play.
gonna move on. I'm gonna move on to number 8. So at number 8, I have Utah.
But I'm telling you right now, me and Big Man are on the same wavelength.
Number 8, number 7 we won't be, but number 8 I have Utah. So Utah upgraded their O line. I think that was their biggest.
Oh, well, no, they return a lot at O line. They return a lot at O line, but they will
okay.
have one of the best in the country.
Yeah, their O line's a big point of focus, sort of what I was getting at. O line's a big point of focus, and they got Devin Dampier as the quarterback replacement for Cam Rising. But they went 5-7 last year. It seems like I've seen a lot of preseason media still high on Utah, just like they were last year, going 10-2 and winning the Big 12, no challenge whatsoever. I don't think that's the case. The Big 12 ain't the Pac-12, and they figured that out pretty easy last year. So I think they're still going to have issues to work out, especially still with a new quarterback. So I have Utah number 8.
I'll jump straight into it because I do have them 8 as well. Like you said, they return one of the best offensive lines in the country. So Dampier is going to be protected no matter what. And watching our buddy Carson Fox episode from yesterday, shout out to Carson. He was on the guest on the show last week. He made the point that if you have a lot of returning production or a lot of solid returning production at O-line, it makes it easier to figure out those skill position players. So the questions they have at wide receiver, the questions they have at running back and quarterback should be a little bit easier to work out because they'll be protected behind a solid offensive line. And another point I'd like to make is they don't just bring in Devin Dampier, but they also bring in Devin Dampier's offensive coordinator from Washington State. His name escapes my mind at the moment, but they bring in the offensive coordinator that Dampier is familiar with. So Dampier is going to be in a system that he's familiar playing in, and so it'll be less of a transition in a way. They bring in Wayshawn Parker at running back from Washington State. They bring in a couple guys at wide receiver that they hope and think will be solid wide receivers. So it's going to be about, does the offensive line we know is going to be solid? Can they get production from the wide receiver core and Wayshawn Parker at running back? And then Kyle Whittingham has always had good defenses ever since he was in the Pac-12. He's still going to have a good defense this year. He returns a solid amount of production. And so offensive line defense is going to be solid. Can Dampier take a step? And can Wayshawn Parker, Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, and Ryan Davis, can they be solid skill position players around Devin Dampier in that offensive line?
I'll go ahead and just quickly say that I have West Virginia as my next pick. Like you said earlier, I don't want to get too deep into it because we're going to go game by game here, but there's a lot of unknown. And I have high hopes, and I think that lands us somewhere in the middle.
So where'd you have Utah? Where'd you have Utah?
I had Utah at 10.
And then who'd you have at 9? TCU?
TCU, then WVU at 8.
Okay. I don't hate that. So me and Big Man have Utah at 8. Who do you have at 8, Lombs?
I also have Utah at 8, and I have to echo Ian's sentiment. It really just comes down to, can they figure it out? I mean, I know Utah fans were the most vocal coming into the conference last year that they were going to come in and run the joint, and we have yet to see that. So, I mean, I do have faith they'll be better. I have them at 7-5. You know, they're kind of like in purgatory because, I mean, they should be way better, but you know, we've yet to see them play well enough to warrant that.
Last year, I mean, he hit it. Last year was a lot about they had nothing on offense. They had a really good defense, just nothing on offense. I think this year they'll have a better offense, but not quite good enough to be in Big 12 contention just yet.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in real quick. I got to jump up, take the dog out, but then I'll be right back.
You go for it, boss.
All right.
Who are we looking at for 7?
All right, number 7 for me. I told you this is where we were going to differ. West Virginia, I got it number 7. So again, I'm going to save a lot of this for later. but we're returning Jaheim White. I don't care what anybody says. Has to be one of the best running backs in the country. We're
Amen.
returning him. Our secondary, again, I don't care what anybody says, has to be much improved. You said it with Carson Fox on the episode last week.
It can only go
It
up.
can't get any worse.
Yeah.
It can only go better. So they're talented, watching some of their film and also watching some of our receivers, right? Some of our receivers are good. Cam Vaughn, dude. Cam Vaughn
He had
is
like
legit.
43 receptions for like 800 yards at Jack State.
Cam Vaughn is legit. And even some of the backup guys that we got out there for running back and for wide receiver, our linebackers are better. I think we're losing some production on both lines, but I think the questions will be answered early on that they're not bad. And so I think that this will land us somewhere in the middle of the conference. I think a good, solid record prediction to have is 7-5 for West Virginia. I feel like that's realistic. So I can see 6-6, but 7-5 is sort of where I stand. So I have West Virginia number 7.
Well, what I think is interesting is what we've done ranking rise with West Virginia kind of sums up what West Virginia is going into this year. You've got them 7th. I've got them 9th. Lombs, you said 13th, right?
Yep.
And then Matt had them, around 8th?
Yeah.
That's just – it is completely skewed. And so that kind of sums up West Virginia is that nobody knows what's going to happen. So nobody knows where to place them. For the most part, we're all in the semi-middle of the conference. It's going to be interesting. But like you said, let's not get too much into West Virginia because we still got 12 games to pick.
All right. Lombs, did you have it 7?
I had TCU.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really know where to put them. I mean, I think that Utah slots in underneath them, and I mean, I'm confident that TCU will be able to put it together. So I think them at 7 is a fine pick.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I said, Josh Hoover should be good at quarterback for them. So
I got BYU 7.
you have BYU 7. Okay.
7.
Well, that's not far off where I have them. Move on to number 6. I have Baylor at number 6.
Really?
I have Baylor at number 6.
Really? Wow. Okay. So we're going to start differentiating a little bit.
Yeah.
This is where I have TCU. This is where I have Hoosier, not Hoosier, Josh Hoover and the Horned Frogs at 6.
I have Baylor at number 6. Sawyer Robertson is going to be their leader. I don't think anyone can argue that. Sawyer Robertson's a real deal. They're retaining over 70% of their offense. So I think offense Baylor is taken care of. Where I have a problem with them on paper is defensively. I think with some of the games that they have to play in the middle of the season, their secondary could get exposed, especially if Avery Johnson figures out how to throw the ball for Kansas State. Baylor could have some problems. So that's what's holding me back from Baylor is that secondary.
Man, oh my goodness. I'm high on Baylor. You'll see where I have Baylor. You probably know where I have Baylor based off of what we talked about prior. I won't even say anything, but I'll get there.
So you say number 6, you had TCU.
I had TCU. And then I didn't really say anything about BYU at 7, but like we can get there when you all say BYU.
Yeah. Lombs, did you have number 6?
I had BYU 6 and Baylor 5. I mean, a whole lot of changes at BYU. I mean, they kind of lit the world on fire last year, but I mean, I kind of expect them to regress a little bit, but they'll definitely be contenders and they're going to be annoying to play for sure.
Yes. So me and you have BYU and Baylor flipped. I have BYU 5. They could break out and provide offensive consistency that they sorely need this season to be competitive, which I think they can. I think offensively they can break out. Their defense tends to struggle on pass rushes. So I don't know how the defense is going to be. It's sort of like Baylor. They have more questions on defense than they do on offense. But again, I have BYU and Baylor sort of interchangeable at 6 and 5.
I'll go. Okay, so I had BYU 7, and they could be much higher, but like you mentioned, to the whole Retzlaff situation is that has kind of put a wrench in the road. So, however, they still retain Chase Roberts and LJ Martin. So they have two solid, position players. It is going to be about, okay, they caught fire in 24. Can they keep it going? Can Kalani Sitake find a way to keep it going? And will Bear Bachmeier, the quarterback wearing number 47, make it make sense? Can he be a good enough quarterback to be one of the top teams in the Big 12? He's a true freshman quarterback. So that it's just a difficult thing to gauge because I think the supporting cast around Bachmeier is good enough to compete, but throwing a true freshman quarterback in a really competitive conference that any game week to week you could win or lose is going to be extremely tough. And I don't know if Kalani Sitake can keep the Cinderella story going. They had a really rough year in 23, caught fire in 24, ended the year just missing out on the Big 12 championship and then destroying Colorado in a bowl game. What I will say is Lavelle Edwards is one of the toughest places to play in college football. And so if they can defend home field and win a couple road games, they could see their way back to similar position where they were last year. But it is going to depend on the play you get from Bear Bachmeier.
I also have BYU at 6 for a lot of the reasons that you said. It's actually really easy to talk after you, Tyler, because you hit all the points I was going to hit. But exactly what you said. They have a really solid team. There's a couple question marks that have been added in recent months. And I think they are clearly the bottom of the top bracket or the top of the middle bracket if we're still dividing that into thirds. So I like BYU. I think they're a solid team, and I think they're in that upper third.
Like I said, I'm dividing mine into bottom 5, middle 6, and top 5. And so BYU, TCU are kind of interchangeable as the top of the middle 6.
Yeah, I think
I have TCU at 6, BYU at 7, but I could easily change those. That could go either way for me.
Sure.
All right.
What we have at 5?
At 5, I had BYU.
Okay.
Yeah, 5, I had BYU. I have a top 4. So for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and run down these teams because in my opinion, these are the teams that have the most realistic shot. So I'll just say a few things about each team and then we'll go around. So Texas Tech, I have number 4. Number 1 portal class in America. But again, they have a lot of question marks because they rebuilt that. They rebuilt that. And it's very experimental. They are going to be so fun to watch because I think they have the best portal class in America, but they're the most experimental football team in college football. Number 3, I got Kansas State. Avery Johnson looked improved. They lost to Iowa State, but like we were talking about earlier in the episode, weather played a huge part in that. He looks better. Didn't get to see all of what I wanted to see from the running game because of the early injury. But then Kansas State, I still expect to be there even with that Iowa State loss. Number 2, I have Arizona State. Kenny Dillingham, probably the best coach in the Big 12, or most motivational coach in the Big 12. They're returning their quarterback. They're returning Sam Leavitt. So that's going to be huge for their consistency. Their linebackers make them arguably the best defense in the Big 12. So I could easily see them getting in the college football playoff. And then number 1, I have Iowa State, maybe a little high on Iowa State, but Rocco Beck looked good. I know Matt was saying the first half he had problems passing the ball, which he did. But Rocco Beck looked solid. Running back looked solid for Iowa State. Running game looked great at the end in the fourth quarter there. I think Iowa State and Arizona State face off in the championship game.
So
time will tell. Rematch.
You're thinking they run it back. I think the conference is way too parity driven for there to be an exact rematch. Now I do have one team returning. My top 5, which this is my conference contender tier. If you were to tell me that I have got to pick 2 teams to make the conference championship out of 5 and my life depended on it, these are the 5 that I would give you that I'm fairly confident the conference championship game will come out of these 5. Number 5, I have K-State, who previous to yesterday was higher. So, considering yesterday, so we're cheating a little bit. I have Kansas State at 5, just below Iowa State at 4. For a lot of the reasons you said. Rocco looked solid yesterday at times, but then he also looked shaky at times. Like Matt brought up the drive where he went 3 for 3 and had a beautiful touchdown pass. I'll say all of his touchdown passes, the 2 that he did have, they were very perfect balls. And the one that he had that did not count, it was like right off the pylon, and I can't remember who it was that caught it, but it was the only place that the receiver even had a chance to catch it, even though it didn't count. And then Kansas State being just below them is Kansas State lost yesterday. That is the only reason they're just below Iowa State. At 3, I have Texas Tech. And again, for this, a lot of the same reasons you said. They bring back Baron Morton, who's going to be one of the top half quarterbacks in the Big 12. They bring in one of the most ridiculous transfer portal classes we have ever seen. They spent $40 million, I think I've seen floating around, that Texas old money going crazy. I will say Joyner, the running back they brought in from USC, is injured. And I think that will be very, very difficult to make up, because that was going to be that was going to be their running back 1. And we know last year they leaned pretty heavily on the run game, despite them being like an air raid type offense. And he's out for the season. And so if Tech is very limited and you're comfortable playing an extra guy in the secondary because they can't run the ball, that could be detrimental to Texas Tech offense. Number 2, I have Arizona State. I want to say that before the game yesterday at Iowa State, Kansas State, I had Kansas State at number 2, taking on Baylor in the Big 12 championship, because that could still happen. And I probably sound a little stupid because I'm way overreading into a week 0 game, but I was and I still am sold to the fact that Arizona State is not going to be nearly the team that they were last year, simply because of the loss of Cam Scat. Scattaboo was that offense. Sam Levitt is going to be a really good quarterback. He's probably going to be one of the top 2 or 3 in the conference. But Cam Scattaboo was that offense. That offense was electric and worked because the defense had to stay honest on Cam Scattaboo. Now they bring back Jordan Tyson, who's going to be probably one of the top 3 to 5 wide receivers in the country. And like I said, they return Sam Levitt, who's a really good quarterback. But can they find offense without Cam Scattaboo in the backfield? I would not be surprised if you see Arizona State fall in the rankings simply because defenses no longer have to lock in on Cam Scattaboo in the backfield, and they are more comfortable playing. Can they put double coverage on Jordan Tyson, or can they bring in more blitz packages that are putting Sam Levitt in pressures that he wasn't used to last year because they had to stay honest to Cam Scat? And number 1, give me the Bears. Y'all are too low on the Bears. I'm telling you right now, Sawyer Robertson will be at the Heisman ceremony. He is going to be there. Sawyer Robertson is going to have a ridiculous year. I don't even know how to explain how high on Baylor I am. They're winning the Big 12. Dave Aranda in 2023, I thought was gone, all on the hot seat, and then he comes in 2024, goes 8-4, gets really hot the back half of the year. I think they won their last 6 or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. Pendergrass is injured, so that is going to play a factor in how the season goes. But they have Bryson Washington to carry the rock. They have solid wide receivers and skill position players around Sawyer Robertson. He's going to have no shortage of guys to throw the ball to. That defense played solid last year in the back half of the year. Give me Baylor as the number 1 team in the Big 12, and spoiler, to make the college football playoff.
I have the same top 5 as you guys. I had Tech at 5, K-State at 4th. Again, I think K-State could be higher. These are all teams that could be 12-0, but they're going to drop 1 or 2 somewhere along the way. And it's just a question of who eats who, what day of the week. I had K-State at 4. I had Baylor at 3rd. I feel like they are absolutely top 3, but honestly, I don't know where in there. And I'm right there with you where I think they could be number 1. They just look really, really good. I have Arizona State 2nd and Iowa State at 1st. We'll see. It's preseason, so I don't want to say this is the law. But, I mean, you look at it, and no matter how you set it up, it just feels like it could be entirely different. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same top 5. I mean, where I differ is, I mean, I have Iowa State at 1, and I just really think it's because that whole team is maturing, and I just think they're going to be able to put it together. I mean, they're just so fun to watch.
Fair enough.
I'm telling you. What is it?
I was to say I'm the only one that doesn't have Baylor top 5. I have 6. Baylor.
I am so unbelievably high on Baylor. They started the season last year 2-4, and then rattled off 6 straight. I think. And they finished the season with a loss to LSU, but played them competitively. I think LSU is going to be a incredible team this year with what they return and the transfer portal class that they bring in. But 1,000+ yard rusher in Sawyer Robertson. I'm sorry, in Bryson Washington, and then they have an incredible quarterback in Sawyer Robertson. I am extremely high on Baylor. Give me the Bears.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up our Big 12 power rankings. You guys should let us know what you think down in the comments. I would like to see if I'm not the only one who has Baylor lower.
Yeah, if you guys think UCF is going 12-0, let us know.
Yeah.
Why we're wrong.
Yeah,
and then we'll tell you you are wrong.